Today we have an action-packed video on ClubWPT Gold where I pick up pocket queens, the ladies, in 4 different hands. I fire some huge bluffs with just king high, guys. There's some huge hands in this video. It's the first video of my $10 to $1,000 bankroll challenge. You're going to want to stay tuned to see if I hit that goal. What's up, guys? I just kind of want to quickly reintroduce myself real quick. My name is Ben Savage, or some of you may know me as Benny. If you don't know me and you're new here, this channel used to be a gaming channel where I tried to post gaming content fairly regularly. I tried several times over the past few years to get this channel off the ground and up and going, but never really worked out. And since then, I've kind of quit playing a lot of video games, and what I spend most of my free time doing is playing poker. I play a lot of live games. I play, here recently I've been playing a lot on ClubWPT Gold. I enjoy it a lot. What I've been playing a lot recently is tournaments and stuff like that. But here today, we're actually been playing some table games. I don't play the table games on there as often as I do the tournaments. I just enjoy the tournament style a lot better. But I decided to, since I've been playing it so much, to, try to post some content on it. And today I actually want to do a challenge. And this challenge is going to be, I'm starting with a $10 bankroll, and I want to try to turn that bankroll into $1,000 playing micro and possibly some low stakes. It's going to be challenging, but I've never seen this type of challenge before. I've seen the low stakes challenges, but I've never seen someone strictly playing micro stakes. And my goal may be a little large. $1,000, that's steep. It's probably going to take me a while because the micro stakes on there, they're like $4 max buy-in. But I'm starting with $10, so I have around 2.5 bullets. And we're going to see how it goes. This session was fantastic, as you know from the intro. We pick up some huge pocket pairs. We fire some pretty big bluffs with some nice hands. And without further ado, let's roll right into the video. All right, guys. So rolling right into the hands. The very first hand, we pick up the beautiful 5-6 suited. It's kind of the low end of my opening range, especially in early position. But it's the first hand. Let's throw out a quick bet and see what happens. I actually end up getting 3-bet. By the low jack, and I thought about it for a while. I could play it. There's one caller, I believe, maybe 2 callers, but this early on, not really worth it. I would have flopped a pair and I probably would have got sticky, and just not really the time. Maybe later on in the session. But then we pick up jack 4, which is a fold. You guys are probably gonna think I'm a nit, but my standard is 3-bet or fold. So if I have a hand I can 3-bet with, I'll continue. I'll throw out a 3-bet, but if I don't, I'm likely not going to be playing the hand. In this hand I pick up king 7 in the big blind. Nobody wants to bet. Really dry board. I thought about throwing out a quick bet, but you see I probably would have called by that rivered pair 5. So and then I pick up queen 4 in the small blind, which again is another fold. And then 10-4 on the button. There's a raise from early position, and it's just a fold. But not a lot of action starting out. But this next hand, I believe I pick up ace king. That's right. Yep, in the cutoff, and beautiful hand, the beautiful big slick. There's an open from the +1, and I think I 3-betted up here to 5 big blinds. That's right. And I think the open raiser calls. I think that nope, I actually get 3 callers. So we're going 4 ways to a flop here. Flop comes pretty good. I'm pretty much always gonna be throwing out a c-bet. I go for a little less than half pot here because even though I didn't hit anything, no one else probably didn't hit anything. So fairly standard c-bet here. I should be c-betting all of my range, and I just take it down there. Pretty simple. Very next hand is king 3 offsuit. So what you guys will come to realize on this channel, king 3 is my favorite hand. Specifically king 3 of spades. I actually think about going for a raise here, but I do end up laying it down. There's 2 guys in the blinds that pretty much call 50% of their range. Any kind of flop could be pretty bad for me, and I don't really know what to do post flop. Of course I could always throw out a c-bet, but having just king high, not really the good time and place. If I was later in position, I probably would have went for an open, but The very next hand, I pick up jacks. Now, I absolutely despise pocket jacks. Pocket jacks never goes good for me. You know, a lot of people say you should just, get it all in pre-flop, yada, yada, yada. I hate pocket jacks, but, it's a good hand, quote unquote. So I am going to open here in the +1. I get one caller from the low jack, and then I think, yeah, I get raised to 24 big blinds from the +1 who limped in. This is probably aces. The guy's got a 2% raising, pre-flop raising range. It's probably aces or kings or maybe even queens at this point, but the flop brings, of course, an ace. He throws out a c-bet. I really don't want to get sticky here, so I just let it go. Pocket jacks is terrible. Hate that hand. Maybe I played it wrong. Maybe I should have got it in, but glad I didn't. The ace on the flop was definitely better for his range than it was mine. Next hand I pick up 10-6 in the under the gun, and it's just a fold. Terrible hand. And I've got 2-6 in the big blind, folded it. Pick up ace-5 in the small blind. Not really sure what I did here. I think I ended up limping in. Maybe I went for a 3-bet. We'll see. I do go for a 3-bet, or an open, because everyone else was limping in. So not a bad hand. You got a bunch of dead money out there, but I do get 2 callers. It's micro stakes. Everyone kind of wants to see a flop, but the flop comes absolutely beautiful for my range. 2 pair, such a sneaky disguise 2 pair. I did raise pre-flop, so the ace and queen should always hit me. I do fire, for a round half pot c-bet, and I get called actually. And the 9 seems to be a pretty safe, turn card to keep barreling, and that's what I do. I fire out another bet, and I just take it down there. Nice little pot, 37 big blinds. Good to get the ball rolling. And I'm not exactly sure how I'm down to 198 big blinds. I think it's because, it's because of that hand with pocket jacks. See, if I didn't pick up those pocket jacks, then I'd be perfectly fine here. Then I pick up ace king in the cutoff. Folds around to me. I'm going to fire out, of course, an open. Open a 3 big blinds to get 1 caller. Flop comes pretty good. I flop top pair, top kicker, and a backdoor flush draw. Fire out a, just a simple c-bet. See if he calls. He could have 7, 8, 8, 9. You want to keep those draws in there. So I didn't fire too big, and 4 big blinds apparently was just too big for him, so he lets it go. Then the very next hand, I pick up the old Brunson. Terrible hand. Sometimes I'll throw in some bluffs here and raise here and there with those bad hands, but really wasn't the time. I pick up 10-7, which again is another fold. Pick up Jack 9 in the under the gun. I do believe I let this hand go. Pretty bad hand here again. Yep, I did. And the very next hand, I pick up the ladies for the first time this session. Guys, be ready. I pick up pocket queens 4 different times, and this is what you love to see. There's an open from the under the gun. The +1 raises, and then, yeah, that's what I thought. So the hijack actually bumps it up with a 4-bet to 42 big blinds. Crazy action in these micro stakes, and I'm sitting here with pocket queens in the big blind. Sometimes I could be afraid of, aces, kings, but it's usually not pretty likely. It's usually ace, king, small pocket pairs. So I just throw out the call. I do believe both of these players, no, one player called. Flop comes, pretty good. I have, top pair to the board. I have an overpair. It checks around in the turn. I assume I'm probably sitting in the best shape possible. Because, the turn was an absolute brick. So I fire out a bet of 35 big blinds. He actually called the original 4-better. And then I just check it down, and, I'm good. I think, I know I have it kind of cropped where you can't see, the top player's hand, but I think he had ace king. He was floating with ace king there on the turn. Pretty big pot there. I think it was over 100 big blinds. It's crazy action, guys. That's what I'm telling you. And I get queens 4 times and get paid off on 2 of the other 3. One of them you'll see later on was, just a tough hand. I think I got bluffed. it was pretty bad, but you know, the action here is great, guys. Then I folded, I think that was Jack 4. I can't remember. I folded that last hand, and then 7-8. There's an open in the low jack. To me, I do believe I end up folding this hand. It has some connectivity post flop, but really not a good hand. Then I pick up King 7 in the low jack. Folds around to me, I believe. This guy, the K-Rex guy, is actually a pretty tight open raiser, so you know, I could be afraid of most of his range, but King 7 is just not a very good hand to play post flop, so I just let it go. All right, guys, we're rolling right along. Coming in at hand number 21, I actually stepped away for a few minutes, and when I come back, you know, we'll see that it limps all the way around, and I'm in the big blind. I have, you know, pretty bad hand. I could be raising here, but if I had any other hand other than 7-5 offsuit, I probably would. But not really the right spot to be finding bluffs with 7-5 offsuit pre-flop in the big blind, especially since I'm going to be seeing pretty much a free flop. I actually flop a pair and decide to check because, you know, there's an ace and queen out there. Could have called pre-flop with, you know, ace X, queen X, any hands like that, you know, have me pretty much smoked. I don't think, you know, there's any pocket pairs to worry about here, maybe pocket twos, pocket threes. Really, you know, could be any kind of ranges that dominate me right now because it's a limped pot. Then the 9 on the turn seems pretty safe for me, so I fire out a quick little bet around 75% pot, and I actually get called by the under the gun, and then I get raised by the +1. In this spot, I really just assume it's probably a queen X or an ace X, and you know, not really the time to be calling off with third pair. So actually fourth pair now. So I decided to just let it go. The very next hand is queen 4 in the small blind. You know, pretty bad hand. So I just, you know, I'm gonna let it go 95% of the time. Then coming in hand number 23, I have Jack 7 offsuit, and you know, it's just a fold. Guys, in this session, I did actually record the entire 100 hand session, just to, you know, show everything, showing you my folds, my 3 bets, you know, all of my actions. Here again, I pick up my favorite hand, Queen 3, and I actually decide to just limp in. You know, why not? I may flop good, you know, may come great for me, and I can just take it down, but we see here that it actually comes terrible for me. King 3 is one of those hands. I know it's a really bad hand, but you know, I just actually enjoy it a lot. And there's a lot of different reasons why I like King 3. It's none of them equate to it actually being a decent poker hand. And, you know, it's just one of those hands that I get too involved with. I like to, you know, be fun with it. Poker is one of those things where I like to, you know, just, you know, have a little fun. I know a lot of people play it, you know, for the profitability, but, you know, it's a game at the very end of the day, so have some fun with it. Here I pick up a 3 on the turn, and I could actually be betting here, but you know, as you see, I actually tried to fold and just get out of the way because I'm sure someone's got a 7, someone's got a 5. If anyone had a weak queen, now they have a set, and it's just really a bad position for me. And we'll see that someone does have a 5. Someone had a flush draw, they weren't going anywhere, and it just would have been really weird if I fired out a bet there. Very next hand, I pick up Jack 5 offsuit, and of course, it's just going to be a fold. I actually fold 3 hands in a row, I believe. The Queen 3, one of those hands where I could get involved. It's suited. If it was King 3 of spades, I'm definitely getting involved. I'd probably raise, but nonetheless, I do decide to fold. I do fold the very next hand as well. Not picking up a lot of good hands here, you know. In poker, if you really just win one hand every once in a while, I don't know the actual statistics to it, but if you win one hand every once in a while, then you know you're doing pretty good. I actually would have flopped here the nut flush draw and the nut straight draw to a jack. And there you go. I would have turned the nut flush. That is why I kept this hand in there. I forgot that I kept this hand in there for that reason. Just to show you that you can't be result oriented. It's a good fold. Queen 3 is a bad hand, but you know, you don't want to get too involved with those bad hands. It's just never really worth it. Then next hand I pick up the worst hand in poker, 7 deuce, and of course it's a fold. I actually probably would have got paid pretty good in that Queen 3 hand, which is what I was just checking, and it really just kind of bothered me in the moment. But now looking back at it, I can't be result oriented. You know, it was a good fold. Then the very next hand, I pick up Queen Jack offsuit. I'm going to be always, you know, opening when it's limped around to me. I'm in the big blind. You know, always going to be opening here with Queen Jack offsuit. If I fire a C bet, get one caller. It could be a draw here. It could be a king. You know, there's spades out there. I decided to fire out a second bet on the turn with the 7 offsuit. Then the river brings in another spade. So if he had a spade draw and he was floating me, he's probably good now. If he had a king, he was always good. So I just decided to give up on the river. And of course, he fires out a quick little half pot bet. And I can't do anything with it. I got to fold. You know, that's probably the best decision there. I probably could have went without betting the turn, but, you know, it's always easy to say what you would have done now after the fact. In the very next hand, 10-5 offsuit, and then I pick up 10-5 offsuit again, both of which are a fold. Then Jack 3 offsuit. All right, guys, now I pick up Ace King suited in the theoretical low jack, but pretty much the under the gun, because the +1 was, you know, sitting out and the under the gun player was not here. So I open Ace King suited, you know, quote unquote under the gun to 4 big blinds. It folds around to the big blind who decides to call. I probably should be checking here since I have such a strong hand and I don't want to be called by a 7. But I fired out a C bet and I take it down there. Alright guys, now we're going to pick up Ace 7 offsuit in the big blind. There's an open from a very new player, 43 total hands on the website. And, you know, I could be calling here, I could be folding here. There's no telling really what he's opening, but he's opening pretty big. Most new players kind of overplay their big hands, so I decided to just let it go. Then I pick up Jack 3 offsuit, which is a fold, 4-6 offsuit, which again is a fold. I actually, you know, go on a pretty bad streak here with cards. I pick up Ace Deuce, or 8 Deuce, you know, terrible hand, 4-7, pretty bad hand here again, and then Deuce 5 suited. I actually decided to limp in here, which I really don't like from the under the gun position, but you know, here in the moment, like I said before, it's easy to say, you know, what you would have done, what you would have rather done, because see here now, late position has, you know, just an easy raise. All right, guys, coming into hand number 39, which is a pretty weird one to say the least. I pick up pocket 6s in the big blind. This is one of those hands where you always, you know, are usually going to see a flop unless there's some crazy pre-flop betting going on. And it's one of those hands that you really just like to check or call. In my case, be a check because I'm in the big blind. But that's not what I do. I actually decided to bump it up to 5 big blinds. I guess I was trying to isolate and get rid of some of the dead money out there. But that's not what happens. I get a call from the under the gun. I get a call from the +1. And then the player who just sat down and posted his blind, he actually folds. So, you know, I got rid of one player. 3 ways to the flop. Comes pretty good for my range. King, queen, deuce. I fire out a quick little C bet. Because usually that's what I'd be doing if I actually hit the king or the queen. Turn comes a deuce. Brings in 2 hearts. This is a pretty safe turn card for me, so I fire out another bet on the turn of 10 big blinds. It's actually pretty small. And then I get raised off from the +1 player. I don't really like this. What could he be raising me with? You know, he may have turned a flush draw. He may have limped in with ace deuce. It's really confusing. I actually decided to just let it go because he only had 91 big blinds behind. If I call, that puts us at 120 big blinds in the pot. And, you know, he's probably going to rip it all in on the river. If I miss the 6 on the river, I'm in really, really rough shape. So, you know, I think a fold is fine there. Then I pick up King 8 suited on the button. I actually decide to raise it up when it folds around to me. I get the caller from the small blind and the big blind. Then the small blind actually leads out on the flop, which was a pretty ugly flop. I don't know what he was calling with. Maybe queen nine, maybe pocket fours. I don't know. Weird again. And then I pick up ace seven, which is a fold. And then I pick up king, queen in the hijack, and I decide to raise it up when it folds around to me. Flop comes jack five, six. Usually always going to be firing at a C bet here because even though I missed, they probably missed as well. Turn is another diamond and another jack. I'm gonna rep the jack pretty hard here, so I fire out another bet and then I just take it down. Then I pick up queen five offsuit in the low jack. Pretty bad hand, so I'm gonna fold. And then 8-4 offsuit in the +1. Pretty bad hand again, just a fold. King nine. Sometimes I could play this hand, but in early position, I think it's just a fold. Then 9-5 offsuit in the big blind. Pretty bad hand here again. I think sometimes I could be, defending my big blind with this, but it's really at the bottom of my range. I don't usually want to play this hand post flop, but it limps around to me, so I'm just going to check and take flop. Flop comes, not good for me. I turn a pair. Of course, it's checking around. I could have fired out a quick little bet there, but you see that, the player next to me was not going anywhere. He had a flush draw. He had a straight draw. I actually binked the straight on the river. Probably, pretty glad that I didn't bet there. Then the next hand I pick up 3-4 suited in the small blind, and it folds around to me. So usually I'm going to be between limping and raising there. I actually flop a flush draw. Pretty standard C bet here. I have a pretty good draw. And he folds. Easy to take it down there with just 4 high. Very next hand I pick up 5-9 suited in the button. Could be calling, could be folding. Probably more so leaning towards a fold. Jack 7 off, which is a pretty bad hand. Get, one limper, just gonna fold. Then I pick up king 10 offsuit in the +1. This is one of those hands where it's really not a great hand, but it's also not a bad hand. If it was suited, I definitely am in there. There's a raise from the under the gun player. He's actually a pretty decent player, so I actually think about it for a little bit, but decide to fold because usually their hands have those ace X's in them more so than mine. So, usually probably just a pretty good idea to fold because I'm usually smoked here. And then the low jack raises and the under the gun calls. I would have missed the flop completely, and we see that both players actually had me in pretty bad shape. So it's a good idea I folded there. Then I pick up queen 9 offsuit in the under the gun, which is a pretty bad hand, just going to fold. And in the very next hand, we pick up the ladies for the second time of this session, guys. There's an open from the low jack. I could be, raising here, especially with the call from the small blind. I think I should be squeezing here for a rather large, or just call or raising a little bit to build the pot. I actually go with the latter of those two. I raised to 9 big blinds and both players call. Flop comes amazing. Ace, queen, jack. We flop a set. Sets are very hard to make, guys. There's a straight out there, but I usually think most players probably have an ace here, especially when I throw out a C bet and the original raiser calls. The turn brings in a 3 and a backdoor flush draw of 2 diamonds. I decide to throw out another bet because I'm probably safe here, and I actually take it down there. Immediately following that hand, we pick up king jack suited in the small blind, another premium. It actually folds around to the button, who throws out a 3 bet to, or an open to 3.5 big blinds. I usually think I could be raising here because I have their range smoked most of the time, but I actually decided to just call. There is a call from the big blind. A flop comes 5, 6, 8, 2 diamonds. Pretty good for my range. I have the second nut flush draw. They probably flop nothing as well, so I throw out a quick little bet on the flop. Then the turn brings in the king of clubs. I definitely think I'm good now if I wasn't good before. Maybe there's 2 pairs, but I usually think that's the big blind that has that more so than the button, and they fold. So I definitely think I have the best hand now. Then I get a call from the button, and the turn brings in offset 2, so I'm definitely going to keep betting. I'm probably very good here. I bet rather small for value, and then something really weird happens. The button throws out a raise to, can't remember exactly what it was. Let's see here. They throw out a raise to any day now. 41 big blinds. And this is weird because there was a lot of draws out there. Of course, they may have flopped a straight, but I don't usually think that's pretty possible. They could have aces and just played it weird, but more likely than not, they're bluffing. So I snap it off. Well, I don't snap it off. I think about it for a minute, but then I end up calling, and I'm good. It was just played very weird. I didn't think they had a better hand than me, and it was just one of those weird bluffs that just didn't get through. And then I pick up the ladies for the third time. This time I actually decide to just call. I'm in position. Sometimes I like a raise here to get the blinds out of the way, but they folded anyway, so it's good. Flop comes actually very good for me. 6-9-3. I have an overpair to the board, and the original raiser just decides to keep barreling into me for whatever reason, and I'm just snapping them off because I'm not going anywhere with an overpair. And they check the river. I could be betting here, but I'm not usually called by worse. So we check it back, and we're good. They had ace king. Very next hand we pick up ace 4 suited. I actually decide to raise it up here when there's two limpers. It's a decent hand. It plays pretty well. I know exactly what my flops look like. I know exactly when to get out of the way if I don't flop pretty good. And I get 1, 2, and probably 3 callers here. We're waiting for the low jack player to make a decision, and they decide to just fold. Flop comes pretty bad for me. 5, 7, 7, 2 hearts, but I'm always going to be c-betting because even though I have nothing, it's very likely the other two players have nothing as well. So I throw out a c-bet to 6 big blinds. The button decides to fold, and then I get a call from the under the gun player, and they check it back on the turn, which brings in an ace, which actually gives me top pair. I have a little bit of showdown value now, but I get, I'm crushed by any better aces. I'm crushed by what is now a straight. So I actually contemplate a little bit. I could be betting here, but probably not a good time to be betting. I have some showdown value, and I decided to just check it back, and we're good. Then following that hand, I pick up some pretty bad hands. Deuce 4, which of course is a fold. Ace 9 offsuit. I could be playing this hand, but I actually opt to fold. 10 deuce in the +1. Just a fold here. 7-3 suited in the under the gun, just a fold. And then in the big blind, I pick up queen deuce offsuit. It limps around to me, and I actually flop top pair with a backdoor flush draw. Sometimes I could be good here, but I have no kicker, so I don't really like firing out a bet here. The ace on the turn is actually a very bad card for me, but it's being that it limped around, it's not so likely that any of the other players have an ace, so I fire out a small bet just to kind of see where I'm at. I get 1 caller from the small blind. They decide to check the river, and I just check back to just see if my showdown value is any good. And of course, they actually hit the ace. So we were not good, and you live and you learn. Jack 3 suited, which is the very next hand, is a fold, and then I fold, I think it was deuce 5 offsuit, pretty bad hand, and then I pick up king deuce suited in the cutoff and decide to raise it up, kind of a bluff here, kind of loose, and everyone folds. So I actually just take down a quick and easy little pot. And then 9-4 offsuit, which is a fold, 4-6 offsuit is of course another fold, and then I pick up ace jack offsuit in the under the gun. Usually I'm always going to be opening with this hand, but there's not a lot of players at the table right now, so I kind of open pretty small to 4 big blinds, and then I get raised by the small blind, who is a pretty tight player. I don't really like it, but ace jack suited, I'm not going anywhere. I could be raising here sometimes against worse players, but I just flick in the call. Flop comes pretty bad for I assume both of us. 9-4 deuce rainbow. They fire out a quick little c bet, And of course, I'm not going anywhere with my ace high. And then the turn is pretty good for me. It's a jack, and I just assume I'm better here. So I throw out a quick raise to 1650. And then, of course, the river brings in a king, which is really, really bad for me. If they were bluffing with, ace king, king queen, they're good now. And then they fire out a river bet of 29.5 big blinds. I don't really like it. I could be calling because I don't have to be good most of the time, but I actually decided to fold, which I believe is the wrong decision. I think I have a lot of, showdown value, but, in my head at the time, I thought they, were just betting with ace king or king queen. And, they of course hit the king on the river. So I just saved my money and let it go there. The very next hand, I pick up 10-4 suited in the big blind. There's an open from the small blind. I decided to just, defend my big blind with a pretty marginal hand. The flop comes pretty bad for what I assume is both of us. I could be firing a bet here most of the time. And then the turn brings us board pairing 7. I actually decide to, for whatever reason, rep the 7 and throw out a quick little bet, and I actually fold it. So it's, most likely they had absolutely nothing, and, we're just good there. The very next hand, I pick up queen jack offsuit in the small blind. Pretty good hand. Plays pretty good post flop. And there's an open from the under the gun. Sometimes I could be raising here out of position, but being that it's not a great hand in queen jack, I decided to just call. And then there is a 3-bet from the big blind. I don't really like it. They probably have most ace X's in their range, more so than me, pocket pairs. I just, when the under the gun player folds, I decide I should probably just save my money and let it go. And then immediately following that, I pick up pocket nines. There's an open from the under the gun. There's a call from the low jack. Me in the hijack or dealer position, I decide to call as well. And there's a call from the big blind. Flop comes 3-3-8 rainbow. Pretty good flop for me. I have an overpair to the board. And then the turn brings out an ace. And, most of the time that under the gun open has a lot of ace X in their range. So it's probably a very bad turn card for me when it checks around again. I could be going for a bet here. I could be checking because I know the ace likely hits everyone else rather than me. But I actually decided to throw out a bet, which I think is the wrong idea. And I actually get the under the gun player to fold, which is, pretty good for me because I think that's who, had the ace, and then everyone else just folds. So I'm good with pocket nines. Pretty strange one. The very next hand, I pick up 5-7 suited, and I'm in the hijack position, or the low jack actually, and I decide to open pretty loose with this 5-7 suited because it has some playability post flop. And here, with the past several hands, I've been able to outplay most of the players at the table with pretty much anything, and so that's kind of why I just decided to loosen up some and open with the 5-7. Flop comes ace jack deuce with 2 clubs. Pretty good for my range. The small blind calls my c bet. I usually don't like that. The turn's an 8 of hearts, brings in backdoor hearts, and then I throw out another bet, which was called. Again, river is a pair of 7s for me. I usually am probably not good here. What was a bluff, realized a pocket pair on the river, and I'm just never good here. So when they fire out for 18 big blinds on the river, I decide to just let it go. The next hand, I pick up 6-9 suited, which is a fold. Queen 3 offsuit, which again is a fold. Deuce 5 offsuit in the big blind, which is a fold. And 10-6 offsuit in the small blind. Here I actually decide to bluff and raise it up to 4 big blinds, trying to just take down the blinds. And that's what I do. Pretty easy one. And then again, some pretty bad hands coming in. 6-8 offsuit, which again is a fold. Queen deuce offsuit, which again is a fold. And then king deuce suited, which is what I bluffed with earlier on and just took it down. I decided to just fold it here. And then the 8 deuce offsuit, which is another fold. And then I pick up 7-10 offsuit in the big blind, and it limps around to me. I decided to just check it here because I don't have that great of a playable hand. and then I flop a pair. I could be betting here. I'm usually just checking here, so I decided to check, and it checks all the way down to the river, and my pair of tens was actually just good. So good for me. And then I pick up 3-4 suited in the small blind. I kind of like this hand. It's not a great suited connector, but I could outplay them post flop. So I decide to limp in. Flop comes very bad for me, and I decide to check. They bet, and I just let it go. Then I pick up ace deuce suited on the button, raise it up 3 big blinds, and no one wants to give me any action. They all fold. And then 7 deuce offsuit, which is a fold, king 6 offsuit, which again is a fold, and 5-3 offsuit, which again is a fold. And then I pick up 9-5 offsuit on the button, very marginal hand, checks down, and then it comes down to the river, and I'm just not good because they rivered a deuce. I had them smoked prior to the river, and they lucked out. But it is what it is. I didn't have a good hand. I didn't want to bluff at it, and I think it was the right idea. Then I pick up ace 10 offsuit in the small blind, which is a pretty good hand to pick up in the blinds. There is an open to 4 big blinds from the cutoff. I could be raising here, but out of position. I actually think I just opt to call against a decent player. I actually flop a flush draw and top pair, which is fantastic for me. The only thing is I'm smoked by any queen or jack of diamonds. Then the small blind, or not small blind, under the gun player actually decides to lead out, which is a little weird, especially since there's a raise from the original pre-flop raiser. I could be calling here to try to hit my flush, but like I said before, any queen or jack of diamonds would have me smoked. So I decided to just lay it down. The very next hand I pick up king queen offsuit on the button. Very nice hand. I decide to raise it up when there's 2 limpers out of position to me, to try to get rid of some of those limpers and realize some dead money. The big blind player folds. The low jack who limped in decide to call, and the hijack just lets it go. Flop comes pretty bad for, I assume, both players in the jack 3-3 rainbow. I decide to just fire out a c-bet because they probably don't have anything either, and they just let it go. So taking it down pretty quickly there. The very next hand I pick up jack king off. Very good hand. Has some pretty good playability. There's an open from the low jack player to 3 big blinds. I actually decide to 3-bet here in the cutoff to try to get the button out of the way. I'm not really worried about the small blind and the big blind calling. Usually what they have is pretty marginal hands. I just kind of want to isolate in position, but that's not what happens. The button decides to make the call, and then again the big blind calls, and the original raiser calls as well. Flop comes 9-6-6, 2 diamonds. As I always say, even though I missed, they probably missed as well. So I fire out a quick little c-bet of 8 big blinds. The big blind actually calls, which is kind of scary because this board actually connects with them fairly well. Then the turn is in offsuit deuce. So I actually kind of put them on a diamond draw at the time and maybe a straight draw. Then, so I bet out for 20 big blinds and they call. So I really don't like this most of the time, especially when the river's an 8 that brings in a straight. But I obviously don't want to go to showdown with king high, so I throw out a pretty big bet, and luckily enough, they fold with king high taking it down. Then I pick up king 6 suited in the low jack position. I decide to just let it go. 6 deuce in the +1 position, another marginal hand, just gonna let it go. 8-3 suited in the under the gun, and I let it go. And then I pick up the ladies for the 4th time of the session. We are just running phenomenal this section, guys. On the big blind, there's an open to 2 big blinds in middle position. And, I'm just going to always be squeezing here to get rid of the worst hands. Flop comes king jack for rainbow. I don't really like it, but it's good for my range. So I'm always going to be throwing out a c-bet. So I c-bet to 10 big blinds, and both players call. The turn brings in a deuce of clubs, bringing the backdoor clubs. I don't really like it. There's probably a lot of kings and jacks in the other player's ranges, so I usually am going to opt for a check here, which is what I do. And then the under the gun player rips it all in. I don't usually have to be good here most of the time to call, but, being that they just, are usually never bluffing, I decide to let it go. And then I actually go to reveal the player's hand, which is what you can do on ClubWPT Gold. And they had King Deuce suited. Wow. They had me smoked on the flop and turn. But just the fact they call with King Deuce pre-flop is phenomenal to me. The very next hand is Queen 3. I let it go out of the small blind. Really kind of shook up by that King Deuce pre-flop call. Kind of had me a little boggled. Kind of sick to my stomach at this point. Then I fold 10 Deuce and Jack 4 offsuit. Then Jack 3 offsuit. Again's another fold. And Queen 4 offsuit again is another fold. Then the very next hand I pick up pocket 3s. Again, one of those hands where I should usually just be calling to try to hit a set. But in early position, I actually raise it up to try to get some in position players to fold. It's not really what happens. I get 2 callers, and then I get 3-bet to 29 big blinds from the small blind. This is usually always a better hand than me. It's such a polarizing raise. It's a pretty good player. 26% VPIP, 17% PFR. I'm usually always smoked here, so I just let it go. Usually not worth hitting a set when such a big bloated pot. Then I have 10-7 offsuit as the, I think, last hand of the session. Hand number 100. Of course, I'm going to fold it. Probably could have got involved being it was the last hand, but, from such a terrible hand, it's usually just not the right place and time. But that's it. We finish off the session with 400 big blinds. Max buy-in was 200 big blinds. So I actually profit 200 big blinds on the session. The session was around an hour and 20 minutes. So that's close to like 180 big blinds an hour, somewhere in there. And my math's probably pretty wrong. I'll actually have it on the screen for you, to check it out. Throughout the series, I'm going to be putting my profit at the end of the video for every video, just so you guys can follow along. But overall, this was a pretty good session. I quote unquote doubled up. I bought in with $4, which was 200 big blinds, profit of $4 because I cashed out with 400 big blinds. Pretty good session. We're going to keep the series rolling along. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, drop a comment if you seen anything in the video that you think I could have done better, could have done worse. Just let me know. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it, and see you in the next one.